Let me do a little confession here, a little self-revelation. You've already got some information on me. I'm married. I've got one wife right now. 5 kids. Hope to keep it that way. But people who know me know that I have a certain addiction. I'm addicted, and I'll just, even if we're strangers, I'll share. I'll be open. I'll be vulnerable. But I'm addicted to ice cream. Are there any other fellow addicts out there? I just want to make sure it's a safe play. Okay, yeah. Hey, fellow addicts, I embrace you. I embrace you. Okay, so I'm addicted to ice cream. My wife and I, after 16 years of marriage, you kind of negotiate certain things. And one of the things I've negotiated is, as the man of the house, I buy the ice cream. All right, so I take trips to my local grocery store, which I don't know what your grocery store looks like, but for me, this is what this is actually my home refrigerator right here. That's actually... But I'll go to the grocery store, and we have these like refrigerated aisles, where they keep the ice cream. And so I go to the grocery store just to buy ice cream. And I know when I'm getting closer to the ice cream section, because the lights in that section get brighter. And I begin to hear voices as I get closer to the ice cream. Hallelujah. And when I get to the ice cream section, I lock into one kind of ice cream. Maybe you've seen this kind of ice cream before. Basically where they take vanilla ice cream and they smash it together with some candy bar. Right? My favorite kind of ice cream is Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream. I am addicted to that stuff. I love that stuff. And God has been good to us. He has provided it in so many different forms. There's no shortage. And... okay, let's close in prayer. God exists. What more do we need? So Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is my favorite kind of ice cream. Now, you're sitting there going, okay, why are we talking about ice cream? Well, here's what I'm going to try and do with ice cream. We're going to use ice cream to help you and I understand truth, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 claims about Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream. You and I are going to think through these claims. Now, here's the first claim. And I want you to think, is this claim true or is this claim false? All right? If I say to you, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious, how many of you say that statement's true? Raise your hand. All right, yeah, all the godly people in the auditorium here. All right, I want to get a good look here, because I noticed there are some people who did not raise their hand. So, if you think this statement is false, please raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think the statement's false. Okay. I don't know, Bobby, do we have Bibles for these folks? Do we have Bibles? All right, now think about this. We have a situation where we have a statement that is both true and false at the same time. How does that work? How can a statement be true and false at the same time? Isn't that contradictory? A statement can't be true and false at the same time, can it? What if I said to you, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious, and then you looked at me and you said, no, actually, Brett, I think it's disgusting. And I look at you and I say, are you struggling with sin? Is that what's going on here? Or if I said something like, well, God sends people like you to hell. Would that be an odd response? Of course it would be. You'd be like, what are you talking about? I thought we were talking about ice cream, Brett. But how can a statement both be true and false at the same time? Now let me ask you this. The statement, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious. What is that statement about? My opinion, my preference. It's actually not about the ice cream, it's about my personal preference in ice cream. Now, that's an important point, that this statement is about me, the subject. Now, let me put up another claim, and let's think carefully through this one. What if I said to you, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is a medicine that helps control diabetes? Anyone think that's true? Anyone who thinks that's true? Hopefully the non-diabetic over here. Yeah, okay. Now this is a statement. How many of you would say this is false? Okay, yeah, we'd all agree it's false. Even if we're not all medical researchers, even if we're not all doctors, we would make the claim, okay, this claim is false. Now, if you disagreed with me in this situation, and you said, no, I think this could be a medicine that helps control diabetes, well, then I'm going to say, no, you're wrong. Whereas in the first situation, I might not say, no, you're wrong. I would say, okay, that's your view, I've got my view. But in this situation, I would say, especially if you're my diabetic friend, I'm going to say, no, you're wrong, and I'm going to try to convince you that your view is wrong on this, right? Now, what is the medicine that helps control diabetes? Yeah, the diabetic is going to inject insulin, not ice cream, right, to help control their diabetes. And so if you thought that ice cream helped control diabetes, I would try to convince you that you are mistaken. Now, even if you sincerely believed that ice cream helped control diabetes, it doesn't matter how sincere you are, I would still try to convince you that you're wrong. Now, what is this statement about? When I say Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is a medicine that helps control diabetes, what is that statement about? It's a claim about the ice cream, right? That's not merely a claim about my personal preference. It's a claim about the ice cream itself. So I'm making a claim about that thing, that ice cream. All right, now, what this illustration helps us to see is the difference between the way a statement can be subjectively true or what we call objectively true. What we've distinguished here are two kinds of truth claims. In the first instance, when I say Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious, I've made what we call a subjective claim, right? This is a subjective truth. Notice the word subject. It's true for the subject or true for the person speaking. I, Brett Kunkle, am the subject when I make that statement. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is delicious. I'm the subject. It is true for me, the subject, not necessarily true for you, a subject. So we'd say the claim is a subjective claim. We'd say it's true for you but not for me, or true for me but not for you. These kind of subjective claims they can change, can't they? And so maybe my personal preference is Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream now, but maybe I eat so much of it in the next year, I'm sick of it next year, and I like something else. But we wouldn't say that this is unchanging. No, we'd say this changes. We'd say this deals with our personal preferences. Subjective claims deal with our personal preferences. But notice, the truth of the matter is dependent on a subject. That's the key. It's dependent upon the personal preferences of a subject. Now, that's very different than the second claim. The second claim is what we would call an objective claim, right? What we might call an objective truth. Now, of course, the claim that we made, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is a medicine that helps control diabetes, would be a false claim, wouldn't it? Insulin is a medicine that helps control diabetes is an objective claim. It's true whether you believe it or not. That's a great definition for objective truth. It's true whether anyone believes it or not. Either insulin is a medicine that helps control diabetes or it's not. It's either true or false, you see. And notice, it's a claim about the object. Not my personal preference, not me, the subject, but the object, the insulin or the ice cream. So the claim is about the object, so the truth of the claim is dependent upon the object, not me, the subject, you see. And so these kind of truths are unchanging based upon the nature of the object, not based on my changing preferences. Does everyone think they understand that? Okay, I'm going to give you a test. So you say you understand it. Let's see if you really do. Okay, I'm going to give you a test. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put up a statement. You simply tell me if the claim is objective or if it's subjective. Okay, that's all I want to know. Is the claim objective or subjective? So I say to you something like this. That guy's shirt is red. Is that an objective claim or a subjective claim? It's an objective claim, right? his shirt is either red or it's not. It's an objective claim. It's about the shirt. The truth of the matter is not based on my perception or my opinion. It's based on what's the truth of his shirt. What if I said red is the best color? That's subjective. That's based on my personal preference. If I say 2 plus 2 equals 4, it's an objective claim. Doesn't matter what you believe. It's rooted in reality. What if I said tropical island vacations are the best kind? Subjective. Now, you personally might prefer to go to a tropical island versus like vacationing in the desert or the mountains or whatever it might be. But this would be based upon the personal preferences of subjects. Okay, what if I told you Brett can bench press 350 pounds? Did someone say false? Because that was not an option. And then there are a couple people just laughing at me. Okay, let's just close. I'm being mocked by you. Okay, so let's say, is this an objective claim or a subjective claim? It's an objective claim, right, about me having the ability to bench press 350 pounds. Now, say that again? Well, okay. Well, but the claim, now notice, there's the claim, Brett can bench press 350 pounds. Now, that claim is either true or false, whether I'm able to prove it to you or not, right? The claim is either true or false, and me being able to prove it is a different matter. See, so it's not because I prove it that it's true whether or not I can prove it. Now, the second question might be, okay, is this claim true or false? It's an objective claim. Objective claims are either true or false. So is this one true or false? Now, some of you, by your laughter, have demonstrated that you don't think that this statement's true. So we might go down to the gym. We'd put 350 pounds on a bench press, and boom, I'll show you what's up, right? I'll show you that I can't do that. I'll show you that clearly it's objectively false. All right? There will be no question in your mind after I'm crushed under the weight. And so it's objectively false, but I want you to notice a couple things. The claim is either objective or subjective. An objective claim is either true or false, and it's not dependent on our ability to prove it. Proving is a second question, whether or not it's true or false, and what evidence I would have for the truthfulness of the claim. That's a different issue. That's going to be important. That's going to come up later. Now, what if I said atoms consist of protons, neutrons, and electrons? Objective or subjective? It's an objective claim. How about this one? What if I say God exists? Objective or subjective? Objective. Why would this be an objective claim? This is just what you Christians believe. Okay, well, can't God exist for the Christian, and for the atheist who doesn't believe in God, he doesn't exist? But why? Why can't it be that way? When it comes to religion, you Christians have your religious flavor of ice cream. The Buddhist has his religious flavor of ice cream. Isn't it personal preference? Why not? But why would you? Why it's either true? Couldn't it be subjectively true for you? Why not?
You just said God exists.
Okay. All right. Now don't use my arguments back on me. Okay, yeah. Now I want to force you to think about that. Okay, let's put up a second claim. What if I said Jesus is the only way to God, and the Jews are wrong about him? Is that objective or subjective? Well, now you're saying subjective. Objective or subjective? Depends on who I'm asking. Okay, so the Jew's going to disagree with us. The Christian's going to say, no, Jesus is the only way. The Jew's going to say, no, he's not the only way for me. So that makes it subjective? Is that? Well, still it's objective? A little more disagreement here. Okay. Let's put another one up. What if I said this? It's wrong to have premarital sex. Is that objective or is that subjective? I hear like 3 people. Objective or subjective? I think there's some confusion. Maybe some of you feeling unsure at this point. Okay, what if I said this? It's wrong for women to have an elective abortion. Not out of medical necessity, but out of some circumstance or something. It's wrong for women to have elective abortions. Subjective? Objective? Confusion? Okay. What happened? What happened to our consensus? Right? 1 through 6, no problem. We kind of nailed those, didn't we? But why when we got to 7, 8, 9, and 10, why did we then have just a lot of difference in opinion? Oh, you're saying belief entered into the equation. Does belief enter into those first 6? You said you can prove some of those scientifically. Okay. Can you prove 7, 8, 9, or 10 scientifically? Okay. This is good. I like the chaos. I like the confusion. I want you to notice something. We switched categories, didn't we? What categories did we move to in 7, 8, 9, and 10? Religion, moral truth. When we move to religion and morality, notice what happened. There's some kind of switch that gets flipped in our minds, in the American mind. And either confusion ensues, or many of us will take 7, 8, 9, and 10 to be subjective. Now, notice, if we say 7, 8, 9, and 10 are subjective, we are saying they are merely personal preferences. Right? So are those merely personal preferences? Excuse me, I'm going to make the argument that 7, 8, 9, and 10 are actually objective claims. I think they're objective claims. But at this point, I do the test because I want you to see some of the disagreement, but I also want you to see some of the confusion, even maybe in your own mind. Maybe you had trouble categorizing that. That's okay. I think this is a result of some of the thinking of our culture that has influenced us. And I want to kind of walk you through why we would ultimately think these claims would be objective, okay? But I want you to know that this idea that religious truth or moral truth are subjective or relative, right, relative to a subject, is a view that is influenced by our culture. And what we find for our young people in particular is that relativism, this subjectivism, is alive and well. Listen to what Christian Smith says in this book, Soul Searching. Christian Smith is a sociologist. This book, Soul Searching, was a major study on the spiritual and religious lives of American teenagers. Here's what he said. He said, American youth, like American adults, are nearly, without exception, profoundly individualistic. The typical bywords are, who am I to judge? If that's what they choose, whatever. Each person decides for himself, and if it works for them, fine. Right? You hear this relativism. Some teenagers champion the skeptic's view of individual relativistic truth with great relish. Some version of this individualistic subjectivism and relativism is the dominant, assumed viewpoint about religion amongst most contemporary U.S. adolescents. Notice, it wasn't that they reasoned to this just kind of carefully. It's the dominant, assumed position of our young people, not just our young people, of our culture. This is the dominant, assumed view. Okay? Now, lest you think in this conversation about objective and subjective truth that this is some abstract conversation, you need to know that ideas like this have consequences. Ideas have consequences. The ideas that we hold will eventually get fleshed out in our life. Let me list some of the consequences. Number one, relativism, subjectivism undermines the notion of sin. Think about it. What is sin? In fact, turn to your neighbor, and I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to define sin. Ready? Go. That was a quick discussion. Someone give me a definition of sin.
Missing the mark.
Missing the mark, okay. Anyone else? Transgression, all right. What else? Anything else? Breaking God's law. Unlawful. Okay, good. Now notice, even all of these definitions you've offered, they imply something, don't they? A transgression. Well, how do I measure a transgression? I must have a standard, right? There's a standard that I'm using. And I think you mentioned it's breaking God's law. That's the standard. Sin is the breaking of God's moral law. God's moral law is the standard by which we measure human behavior to be able to say that's sin and that's not sin, right? And so notice what C.S. Lewis says here. He says it is after you have realized that there is a moral law and a power behind that law, and that you have broken the law and put yourself wrong with that power, it is after this and not a moment sooner that Christianity begins to talk. Look, if morality ends up being merely a personal preference, then what we're saying is it's subjective, it's dependent upon us, and we're saying there's no standard of morality. If it's subjective, it's a personal preference, and therefore there's no outside standard. But if there's no outside standard, no God's moral law, then what happens to the notion of sin? It disappears. Sin doesn't make sense in a subjective context. Do you see that? Are you with me? Okay. Sin does not make sense. It doesn't fit in a subjective context. So for me to say something sin in the backdrop of relativism doesn't really make sense, unless that's simply maybe a personal violation of my own conscience or something. But there's no external law that exists, whether I believe it or not, that I have violated. Now, if the concept of sin is kind of incoherent in this kind of context, and our culture is dominated by this kind of thinking, then does that make it more difficult to share the gospel in that context? Absolutely, because people don't even have some of the background knowledge they need to even make sense of the gospel, you see. And so relativism undermines the notion of sin. And if you undermine the notion of sin, well, guess what? You undermine the gospel. Sin is the bad news that precedes the good news of the gospel. And so in that backdrop, if that's the cultural backdrop, it's going to be difficult to present the gospel without giving some further explanation and getting on the same page about some things. The gospel is going to maybe come across as a little incoherent. Now notice how we as the church pitch the gospel. What's the main message that we lead with when we want to make an appeal to people? Yeah, we do a lot of appealing to preferences or self-enhancement. There's not a lot of talk of, in the modern evangelical church, of breaking God's moral law, being set wrong with God, incurring God's wrath, right? Not a lot of talk about sin and how the crucified and resurrected Jesus fixes that. Oftentimes our appeals sometimes don't even mention the death and resurrection of Jesus, but simply appeal to Jesus will make life better, essentially. God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. Now, that's true as far as it goes, but that doesn't go very far. It doesn't go far enough to get us to the gospel. So notice how we are influenced by this culture. So that's consequence number one. Consequence number two. Sorry, I'm having problems with my mic staying on. So I keep playing with it. Okay. Consequence number two, relativism undermines our mission. It undermines our mission as followers of Christ. How would it undermine our mission? Well, think about the difference between objective truths and subjective truths. Right? Preferences, or what we might say facts. And look, for those of us who think that the claim God exists and Jesus is the only way to God and the Jews are wrong about it, if those are merely subjective preferences, they're like ice cream, right? Well, think about your approach to ice cream. What's your approach to ice cream? Lots of choices. Do you walk into an ice cream parlor and do you say, you go to, say I go in and I'm going to order a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream. Well, if I see someone kind of down the way and they're about to order chocolate chip, do I walk over to them and say, hey, my name is Brett, I just want to chat with you here for a sec. I wanted you to know you're ordering the wrong flavor. Come here, let me show you the one true flavor. Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream. Now, of course you would never do that. You laugh because you realize that's ridiculous. Because when it comes to ice cream, we have personal preferences. You've got yours, I've got mine. And we would never try to convince someone that our flavor is the one true flavor, right? But what if that's our approach to our religious views? And so we think, okay, at the end of the day, these things are merely subjective. I've got my religious ice cream. The Buddhist has their religious ice cream. The Mormon has their religious ice cream. Everyone's got their own religious flavor of ice cream, right? So what does that do to my motivation to go share my ice cream with other people? Certainly, I'm not going to work very hard to convince them. I'm not going to try to convince them that their religious ice cream is wrong. I would never say such a thing if it's merely subjective. Now, what might I do? I might invite them to try my ice cream. Come to my church. It's really cool. We got a really cool pastor. We've got a great worship band. So we end up, notice the subtle shift to kind of an attractional model. Well, don't go out there with the gospel and try to convince people that what you believe is true. No, let's win them over with some attraction. Because at the end of the day, it's subjective. And of course, people who are marketing ice cream, what are they going to appeal to? Attraction. If it's merely subjective, what happens is that this strips our motivation to go share the truth of the gospel. Right? Just like I'm not an evangelist for Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream. If our religious views are nothing more than subjective preferences, that's going to take away our motivation to live our life centered on this mission. We might invite people to come check out our cool church, our cool ice cream, our great tasting ice cream, religious ice cream. But we're certainly not going to work hard to convince them that their views are wrong and our views are right. And so I think relativism undermines our mission. Number 3, relativism undermines justice. There's a lot of talk about justice in the church. And I think that's great. I think these are great conversations we should be having about how we as the church should go out and bring justice to the oppressed and help those out there in the culture. But now think about the whole notion of justice. What does justice assume? If I say that act is unjust, what do I assume? Right and wrong. I assume some standard of justice. But if at the end of the day there's no standard of right and wrong, there's no standard of justice, then there's really nothing that's unjust. It's just that I don't like that thing. But I think we have these kind of built-in moral intuitions that tell us, no, when a child is exploited sexually, that is unjust. That's not merely a personal preference. The wild thing is that you have people in our culture, people with PhD after their name, who will even make claims like sexual exploitation is what you call sexual exploitation might be just the preferences of other people. And see, that's what happens in a relativistic culture. We lose footing to say that's unjust. We lose footing to say that's evil, and that's good. People in our culture lose courage to stand up for that which is right. And this is why you will hear examples of people who will stand by and watch injustice happen. Because a relativistic culture produces moral cowards. See. Another consequence. Relativism, subjectivism makes religion irrelevant. It puts it in the background of life. Let me give you an analogy to help you think through this. It's what the apologist Francis Schaeffer called the two-story house. And what he offered is an analogy to help you understand and help me understand how our minds, how the American mind, how the Western mind views kind of reality. And so we offer this two-story house illustration. And so what you have is Americans' thinking is divided into this kind of two-story house. You have your objective floor, the bottom floor, but you have a second floor, the subjective floor, right? And in the objective floor, this is where we deal with facts. This is where we deal with things that we can know. This is like science, right? And physics and chemistry and maybe law and business. These are the kind of things that would fit on that bottom floor. So you go to work Monday through Friday. You're in the objective floor, right? That's the area you're operating in. However, there's another floor of life, and these two floors are disconnected. In the second floor, that's the subjective floor. That's where you put all your personal preferences there. And so, for instance, you have personal preferences when it comes to family traditions, right? So at Christmas time, you may decorate your tree a certain way. You may have different traditions that you and your family do, but you would never take those traditions and impose them on someone else. You would never say, well, we need to legislate about my family, Christmas traditions. No, these are personal preferences. If you want to hang garland, you can hang garland. I don't have to. These are personal preferences. And we have all kinds of different personal preferences. Now, here's what our culture does. It takes religion and morality, and where does it put it? In the subjective floor. That's why we had some trouble when we dealt with those 4 claims at the end in the test. Our culture has trained us to think anything that's religious or moral goes in the upper floor because religion and morality are merely personal preferences, right? Those are personal preferences, and so let's put those up there. And what happens is that religion and morality fade to the background in much of our life. This is what the researchers at Soul Searching found. When they looked at the religious and spiritual lives of American teenagers, they found that when it came to their religious beliefs, those beliefs about God, were what they said mostly situated in the background of everyday living. So students reported, if I'm in trouble, I kind of get God and bring him out. But when I'm at school Monday through Friday, my religion is in the background. Notice, that view disconnects your religious views from most of your activity. If I'm a businessman living under this model, or I'm a nurse, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or whatever it might be, if I'm, any occupation, this view disconnects what I do on Sunday, right? Here's the religious stuff, from what I'm doing Monday through Friday. And so, what happens Monday through Friday? Well, when I go to business, I'm operating in the objective floor. God falls to the background, right? And so it makes religion irrelevant. In fact, not only does it make it irrelevant, but it makes it easy for our culture to dismiss our views. You want to show that Christianity is illegitimate? How do you do it? You don't have to argue against it. You just do what Christopher Reeve did. If you know Christopher Reeve, he was an actor, played in the early Superman movies. He went through a tragic, I believe it was a horse riding accident. He became a quadriplegic. And he became a big proponent of embryo stem cell research, right, to try and find therapeutic, solutions, cures to something like being a quadriplegic. And so he's in front of Yale University, in front of a student group at Yale University, a bunch of medical students and researchers. And this is what he says. He says, when matters of public policy are debated, no religion should have a seat at the table. I don't object to anyone's religion. I'm a Unitarian myself. But we're talking about the promise of science, the ethics of science, not religion. Now notice what he did. He put religion where? In the upper floor. What did he put in the bottom floor? Science and public policy. Okay, guys, we're down here. We're in the objective floor. And now we're talking about law, public policy, science. You religious people, you keep trying to bring your religion down to our floor. Keep it on its floor. It doesn't belong down here. Now notice, he's not making any arguments against any views. He's simply categorizing. Religion stays up here, and the rest of us, we'll talk about science and public policy down here. So he simply dismiss. You push religion in the upper floor. You dismiss it, right? It becomes irrelevant to the debate because it's religion, not science. Now let me show you a video clip. This is a video clip from our last vice presidential debate. Now I don't care what side of the aisle you are on at this point. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever. That's not my point here. But I want you to listen to Vice President Joe Biden. I want you to hear what he says about religion, and then we'll kind of talk about what is said here. Okay, so listen to this.
This debate is indeed historic. We have two Catholic candidates, first time on a stage such as this. And I would like to ask you both to tell me what role your religion has played in your own personal views on abortion. Please talk about how you came to that decision. Talk about how your religion played a part in that.
My religion defines who I am. And I've been a practicing Catholic my whole life. And it has particularly informed my social doctrine. Catholic social doctrine talks about taking care of those who can't take care of themselves, people who need help. With regard to abortion, I accept my church's position on abortion as what we call de fide doctrine. Life begins at conception. That's the church's judgment. I accept it in my personal life. But I refuse to impose it on equally devout Christians and Muslims and Jews. And I just refuse to impose that on others, unlike my friend here, the congressman. I do not believe that we have a right to tell other people that women, they can't control their body. It's a decision between them and their doctor. In my view, in the Supreme Court, I'm not going to interfere with that.
Okay, do you see what happened there? Do you see the two-story house? Right? He didn't address any arguments that a religious person might offer for their views. He didn't address any of the arguments. He simply categorized. Okay, my church tells me that life begins at conception, but that's a de fide doctrine, right? That's of faith. That's faith. Oh, all right, put that in the upper floor, and therefore I can't impose my faith on someone else, you see. So he didn't have to argue against any views. He simply had to categorize. And he implied that, well, his view comes from his church, and therefore it's faith, upper floor, subjective. I can't bring it out into this debate. That's what happens in our culture. And so then the religious view, what you label the religious view can simply be dismissed, can't it? And you see it simply makes, we can just call people religious. Oh, that view is religious. Oh, let's dismiss it. And we can't even get a seat at the table. You see, so you see the impact here. Faith becomes irrelevant. Let me show you another clip here. This is Britt Hume talking about the whole Tiger Woods incident a couple of years ago. Listen to what he says.
Tiger Woods will recover as a golfer. Whether he can recover as a person, I think, is a very open question, and it's a tragic situation with him. I think he's lost his family. It's not clear to me that whether he'll be able to have a relationship with his children. But the Tiger Woods that emerges once the news value dies out of this scandal, the extent to which he can recover, it seems to me, depends on his faith. He's said to be a Buddhist. I don't think that faith offers the kind of forgiveness and redemption that is offered by the Christian faith. So my message to Tiger would be, Tiger, turn to the Christian faith, and you can make a total recovery and be a great example to the world.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You don't do that. You don't do that on a national news show. You don't suggest that your subjective preference in religion is somehow better than someone else's subjective preference in religion. That's like saying Reese's Peanut Butter Cup ice cream is better than, is the one true flavor. And of course, the reaction was easily anticipated. Here's one example. Eric Deegan's writing for the St. Petersburg Times. Said, I was so dismayed to see Fox News Channel pundit, analyst Britt Hume encouraging Tiger Woods to turn to Christianity instead of Buddhism for spiritual healing on a news show ostensibly devoted to politics. Better voices than mine have already deconstructed how such exhortations are serious examples of religious intolerance and smack of the kind of spiritual superiority fueling the terrorism we are struggling to contain in other parts of the world. Notice, just categorize. There's no argument of whether or not Christianity is true or Buddhism is true. It's simply, look, you tried to bring your religion down into this bottom floor. Don't do that. In fact, to do so is what? It's religious intolerance. It's not just religious intolerance, it's also what? Dangerous. Because this guy, Eric Deegan, thinks that those people who take their religion so seriously, they would offer it as true, well, they're no different. Their ideology is no different than the person who's the terrorist. So he can link this claim, he's linking the claim that Britt Hume makes with terrorism. They're no different at the end of the day. They fuel the same kind of thing. That's what has happened in our culture that says religion and morality, these are relative, these are subjective. And so, what have we done so far? Well, we've kind of made a distinction between objective and subjective truth. And then hopefully you're able to see now with these categories the way our culture thinks, particularly about religion and morality. Dismisses them as merely subjective. And so, when we talk to people, when we engage people with the gospel, what's the response from people? Well, oftentimes they'll say something like this. They'll say, well, that's your truth, right? That's your truth. Now, they're okay with that. They're okay if you have your truth, and I have my truth, and this person's got their truth, as long as you keep those truths personal, private, subjective. Keep it in your churches, keep it in your houses, but don't try to impose those things, right? That's just your truth. Oh, you like Jesus? Okay, that's okay. You're allowed to worship Jesus. That's your truth. Now, how do we overcome this? Because I don't think Jesus is just true for me. I actually think he's true for everybody. I think that's consistent with 2,000 years of Christian history, and I think it's consistent with what Jesus said himself. Remember that statement, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So if you have a problem with the idea that Jesus is the truth, the objective truth, you got to take that up with Jesus. Okay, so how do we deal with this this claim in our culture? Well, let me give you a kind of a helpful way forward here. If someone tells me that's just your truth, Brett, I'm going to ask them a question. I'm going to say, what does my dad look like? What does my dad look like? In fact, maybe we'll get some audience participation here. Anyone want to take a guess? Anyone who doesn't know me or know my dad, want to take a guess? What do you think my dad looks like? Volunteer? Come on, brave volunteer. All right, right here. What's your name, sir? Bill. Bill. Okay, Bill. Tell me, what color hair do you think my dad has?
Dark-colored hair.
Dark-colored hair. Let's go with the specific color. Black, brown?
Black.
Okay, black hair. So my dad has black hair. Okay, how tall do you think my dad is? Give me a specific height.
5'8".
5'8". Okay, so my dad's black hair, 5'8", and let's see. Okay, how much do you think my dad weighs, Bill? Be careful. Be careful. I'm putting you on the spot, Bill.
Well, if he raised his son that loves ice cream so much,
250. Okay. All right. Unbelieving Bill. We've got my dad at 5'8", black hair, and 250. Okay. All right, let's get another volunteer. Maybe someone a little more intelligent. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Another volunteer to take a guess, take a shot. Someone from this side. Any volunteers? Okay, what's your name, sir? Rick. All right, Rick. How tall do you think my dad is? 5'10". What color hair?
brown.
Brown hair. And how much do you think my dad weighs? 165. Okay, 5'10", 165, and brown hair. So now notice, I say, what does my dad look like? We got Bill and Rick with two different descriptions, 5'8", 5'10". Now let me ask this. If I said to these guys, oh, Bill's got his truth about my dad, and Rick has his truth about my dad, and I have my own truth about my dad, would that make sense? No. You go, what do you mean you have your own? They have their own truth about my dad. Like, can my dad be 5'10" and 5'8" at the same time? No. You can't be 5'8" and 5'10" at the same time. So we wouldn't want to say they have their own truth about my dad, right? They don't have their own truth. What do they have? Opinion, idea, belief. Okay, so let's just use a general category of belief. Bill's got his belief, Rick's got his belief. So I could say, okay, that's your belief, that's your belief. But we wouldn't say they have their own truth. You're not entitled to your own truth about my dad. You're entitled to your own opinion. Now, that opinion or that belief is either true or false. So these guys both can't be right. Maybe they're both wrong, but they both can't be right. So now what would we do to determine who's right and who's wrong? What would we do? We get my dad. I'd say, Gary Kunkle, come on in here today. Come on in. Okay, he didn't come with me, so we might look for another way to prove it. What would I do? I'd show you a picture, right? So if I'm going to show you a picture, here's my dad. This is my dad, Gary Kunkle, okay? I'm not quite sure what's so funny here. Why are you mocking and laughing at my dad, folks? Okay, show me a picture of your dad. Let me laugh at you, okay? This is my dad, Gary Kunkle. How many of you believe that? Like 2 people. Bobby, I didn't realize you've got a bunch of skeptics here at your church. Okay, so you don't believe that. Now, all right, notice something here. Let's think through this. Now, this is either my dad or it's not, right? It's either my dad or it's not. It's an objective claim. So it's either true or false. Now, notice, my ability to prove it doesn't change whether or not it's true or false. I think that's going to be important because sometimes some of us have difficulty with helping to give evidence or demonstrate or prove that Christianity is true, but our ability to prove it doesn't make it false. So now we're in a situation where you might need some more evidence. You're skeptical. I make the claim. You don't think this is true. You don't really think this is my dad. So I might give you further evidence, right? So I say, okay, that's the picture I just showed you. There's my dad. Because it's my dad and he's a professional Santa, he works in a mall by my house, and I actually go and take pictures with him, with my family, every single year, right? So notice. I don't know if you can see this. You see, there's my family. It's the same Santa every single year because we want a picture with my dad every year. So is that enough proof? How many of you believe now? Raise your hand. Okay, one new person. Oh, you guys are still. So 3. We got 3 believers. All right, 4. All right, so most of you are still skeptics. So I might offer more proof. I might show you something like this. Okay, here we go. There's me and my wife, and there's my mom and my dad. This is actually, in all honesty, this is my biological father, Gary Kunkle. He is a professional Santa. How many of you believe now? Raise your hand. There's still skeptics here. Okay, for the last of the skeptics. Okay, I understand your skepticism. I understand. You look at Santa, you look at me. Thankfully, there's not a whole lot of comparison there. So let me put this in a mathematical formula for you, okay? If you take Santa and you put him with a short Vietnamese woman, you get me. Okay, that's how that works. That's how that works. Young people, if you have any questions, please talk to your parents. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. In all honesty, in all truth, this is actually my dad, Gary Kunkle, my biological father. Now, you're like, okay, what was the point of that? Back to my question. What does my dad look like? We have 2 differing beliefs. What is it that I'm going to point to show whether or not the beliefs are true or false? I'm pointing to a picture. The picture is a representation of reality. The statement, Gary Kunkle is my dad. Gary Kunkle is 5'7". Gary Kunkle has white hair. Gary Kunkle is jolly. All right, he's Santa Claus. Those statements are a reflection of reality. Those statements are true, and these statements are false, right? My dad has black hair. That's a false statement because it doesn't match up with reality. And that gets us to our simple definition of truth. What philosophers call the correspondence theory of truth. The correspondence theory of truth simply says our beliefs are true, our ideas, our beliefs are true if they what? If they match reality. If they match the real world. That makes them true. Notice, it's not my belief that makes it true. Just because I believe it, does that make it true? No. My belief is true if it matches the real world. Like I said, philosophers call this the correspondence theory of truth. It's the idea my beliefs are true if they correspond to reality. The correspondence theory of truth is really just common sense, isn't it? We do this all the time. Maybe when you heard the announcement that we were going to have this meeting tonight, you had a belief pop into your head. At 6 o'clock, there's going to be this apologetic talk at the school. That belief isn't true because you believe it. And what did you do? You drove to the church tonight, 6 o'clock. You walk in, you see everyone. You matched your belief with reality. Your belief was true because it matched up with reality. Now, we do this all the time, correspondence. I make a claim, I surf. That's true. That's not going to be true maybe if I live in Charlotte. But if I live in Southern California, in Newport Beach, there might be some truth to that. And if it's true, it will match up with reality. I might say Jonah is my 17-month-old son. That is objectively true if indeed I have a son, Jonah. This is common sense. Now, of course, we make the further claim that Jonah's the cutest 17-month-old in the world, right? And that would be objectively true as well. Here's how the Greek philosopher Aristotle put it. He said, if you say that it is and it is, or you say that it isn't and it isn't, that's true. If you say that it isn't and it is, or you say that it is and it isn't, that's false. Thank God for philosophers, right? I know that's what you're thinking. My gosh, I never would have figured that out on my own. Thank you, Aristotle. Well, he was the first kind of philosopher who really kind of cashed out this common sense view of correspondence. Now, I know that every single one of us in here believes this. This is your view of truth. How do I know? Because you look both ways before you cross the street. Why do I look both ways before I cross the street? Because I want to match my beliefs with reality. And it's not enough for me to simply be sincere, is it? I sincerely believe there is no Mack truck coming down the road. We act on our beliefs, don't we? We act on our beliefs that we take to be true. So I walk into the road. I'm very sincere in my belief that there's no Mack truck. Sincerity is not enough. Because if I turn and I look and I see that my belief doesn't match up with reality, when that truck hits me, it's going to change the way I look, right? It's going to kill me. And so this is why we do this all the time. We match our beliefs up with reality. This is the biblical view of truth. The Bible doesn't cash out some kind of theory of truth. It simply assumes this. It assumes this. The word in Hebrew, emet, means faithfulness and conformity to fact. The primary word used in the New Testament, aletheia, for truth, is that which is conformed to reality. Right? The Bible simply assumes this view. I mean, think about it. John 2:21 says, I have not written to you because you do not know the truth, but because you do know it, and because no lie is of the truth. There you go. There's the view. What's a lie? A lie is something that doesn't correspond to reality. Truth is just the opposite of a lie. Truth corresponds to reality. And so now take this back to what we said in our test. Here's the key. This is the kicker. Truth is grounded in reality. So when I make the claim that God exists, notice I'm making a claim about an object outside of myself, God, right? It's an objective claim. So I say God exists. It's not dependent on what I believe. And this is why I was pushing for some of you who are saying, yes, okay, God exists is objective. And I kept saying, why? Why? Because it's an objective claim about a reality outside of me. When I say God exists, it's the same kind of claim as if I say that chair exists that you're sitting on. It's the same kind of claim if I say you exist. If someone says Brett Kunkle exists, that's the same kind of claim as saying God exists. It's an objective claim. When we make moral claims, we are making claims about moral reality. So when I say premarital sex is wrong, I'm saying there is this moral law out there that exists whether you believe it or not. Now, you can choose to disobey that, but I'm saying, no, that exists. It is morally wrong to have sex outside of marriage. And of course, that ties back into who the moral lawgiver is. But my point here is that that's an objective reality whether you believe it or not. Now, maybe I'm wrong about it, because I could be wrong about my objective claims. At this point, I just want us to get a very clear view on what I'm claiming. I'm making objective claims, and objective claims are grounded in reality. Now, the next question, right, after I make my claim that Christianity is true, the question I'm going to get from people is, well, why? So I'm going to claim that I'm a Christian because it's true. I don't mean true for me. I mean true for everybody. It's objectively true, whether you believe it or not. Jesus is the Savior of the world, whether you believe in Him or not. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I've got a lot of good reason to think that I'm right. And I'll offer that. I'll offer the evidence. I'll offer the apologia, right? I'll give the defense. But Mike, be clear on what our claim is. This is the claim of Jesus. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. And so I am a Christian primarily because it's true. It matches reality. God is the one true God of the universe. Other gods are false gods because they don't match up with reality. Those gods don't exist. That's my claim, and I can give evidence for it. Now, of course, tonight, we only have an hour, so I offer a clarification. But let me just introduce you to our organization a little bit, Stand to Reason. Go to str.org. That's our website. We have all kinds of resources there at the website to help you make the case that Christianity is true. Right? Tonight's just a beginning. It's a start. Go to str.org. Connect with us on social media. For those of you who actually want a really good resource that's free, that we offer to you on a regular basis, go out to the table, fill this card out, let us know where you live, and what we'll do is we will send you this. This is our bi-monthly newsletter where we tackle a tough topic, and we help you to think carefully through it so that you can go out into this world and speak intelligently as ambassadors for Christ. In fact, we have some samples of the latest issue out there. It's on homosexuality. It's on the question of whether or not homosexuals are born that way. And we're going to do more than just throw some Bible verses at that question. We're going to help you to think very carefully on it based on the evidence and the research. And so you can get a free subscription to this. Simply let us know where you live and we'll send you free resources. That's out on the resource table. There's some great resources out on the table as well, resources that you can purchase to help you think carefully through this and be able to make a defense for the objective truth of Christianity. Now, let me close with this question, then we'll do some Q&A. If Christianity is not true, should you believe it? If Christianity is not true, should you believe it? No. That's right. No, you shouldn't. If this stuff is not true, you are wasting your time here tonight. Right? This is what the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. In fact, he lays out a way that you could actually falsify Christianity. You want to show that Christianity is false? Get rid of Jesus. Right? Notice what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 12. He says, "Now if Christ is preached that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say there is no resurrection of the dead? But if there is no resurrection of the dead, not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is vain. Your faith also is vain. Moreover, we are even found to be false witnesses of God, because we testified against God that he raised Christ, whom he did not raise, if in fact the dead are not raised. For if the dead are not raised, not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, your faith is worthless." Verse 19, "If we have hoped in Christ in this life only, we are of all men most to be pitied." What's Paul saying? Paul is taking our faith and connecting it with fact. If it's not true that Jesus rose from the dead, your faith is what? It's worthless. It's in vain. We are to be pitied. Because here we are gathering, worshiping a dead guy. That's ridiculous. And so if Christianity is true, you shouldn't be a Christian. If it's not true, you shouldn't be a Christian. Of course, there's a flip side to that. If it is true, if it is true that there is a God, and it's the God of the Bible, if it is true that he revealed himself in Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago, if it is true that Jesus rose from the dead bodily and verified all of the claims that he made, if that's true, that changes everything. Jesus changes everything. The truth of Jesus changes everything. Not just your belief in Jesus, but the truth of Jesus himself. If it's objectively true that Jesus rose from the dead and it confirms all that he taught, then that should change our lives. And then we should orient our life around the resurrected Jesus. You see, that is what I take to be the objective truth. That is reality. And hopefully you become convinced that this is objective reality, that it's true. And as you become convinced of that, that would inform the way you live your life every single day. Amen.